Time moves differently over there. I need you to understand that before I tell you anything else. I was dead for 11 minutes. I know that because there were 3 people in the room when it happened, and 2 of them were checking a clock, and one of them was crying so hard she could not speak for an hour after I came back. 11 minutes on this side. On the other side, it was not 11 minutes. It was long enough to be shown every level of hell, one by one, with Jesus standing beside me, explaining what I was seeing, giving me time to look at each thing fully before we moved to the next. That does not fit into 11 minutes. And yet it happened, and I am here, and I remember every single thing I was shown. My name is Maya. I am 34 years old. I was a drug addict from the time I was 17 until the morning I overdosed on my bathroom floor at 31. That is 13 years. 13 years of something that starts as relief and ends as ownership. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. If you are new to this channel, subscribe. What I am about to share took me 3 years to be able to put into words, and even now, what I am giving you is an approximation. The actual thing was larger than language. Subscribe and stay, because this is not a story you hear once and set aside. And when you finish listening, or even before you finish, drop something in the comments, your question, your experience, something that connects. I am not asking out of routine. I am asking because I spent 3 years not talking about this, believing that what I saw was too specific to me, too strange, too difficult to say out loud in a way that could be received. Then I started getting messages from people who had been to similar places. The comments changed everything. They told me I had to finally do this. So let me start the way I was standing when all of it began. I was in the bathroom of a 1-bedroom apartment in a city I am not going to name. It was a Tuesday. I know it was Tuesday because I had meant to call my mother on Sunday, and I had not called her. And I remember thinking on the bathroom floor that I had let 2 days pass without calling her, and that I would call her when I was done, and that she would not know why I sounded the way I sounded, and that this was fine because I had gotten very good at not sounding the way I actually sounded. That was my last coherent thought before everything stopped. 2 days without calling my mother, and I would call her when I was done. I never made that call from the bathroom floor. I made it from a hospital room 3 days later, which she will tell you was one of the worst and best phone calls of her life. She will also tell you she already knew. She will tell you she knew because of something that happened on that Tuesday that I only found out about later. Something she has never fully explained to me. Something she says was between her and God, and not something she can put into language. I believe her. I have a much higher tolerance now for the things that cannot be put into language. Let me tell you about the people in the room, because the DNA of this testimony matters to me. And I do not want you walking away thinking you are only hearing one person's account. There were 3 people in that apartment when I went under. I am not going to identify them by name or relationship, partly to protect them, and partly because what they were doing there is a detail that does not change what happened and does add complexity I am not interested in explaining. What matters is this. 3 people witnessed what occurred, the physical collapse, the absence of breath, the color change. 2 of them had been using, 1 of them had not. It was the one who had not who called 911. The other 2 were present and unable to help, and they both told first responders, when the paramedics arrived, that they had not expected me to survive. They knew what 11 minutes without breathing looked like. They had seen it before. They were not wrong about the math. I'm telling you this because the clinical detail matters to me. There were witnesses. I was not alone. What happened was observed by multiple people from multiple angles. The physical fact of the event is not something I am reconstructing from inside my own head. The inside of my own head is where the rest of it happened, or rather, where it arrived, because it does not feel accurate to say it happened inside me. It feels more accurate to say I was placed inside it. Now I need to tell you something about the words I am about to use. Before I describe what I was shown, I have to be honest about the inadequacy of what I am about to do. Language is a tool built for this world. It is built for describing things that exist in the same register as the person using it. things made of the same substance as the words themselves, physical places, sequences of events, emotions with edges. What I was shown is not built of that substance. It exists in a register that language was not designed to reach, and what I am about to give you is the closest approximation I can manage after 3 years of trying to find the right containers for things that do not fit in containers. Please hold that. Please hold the knowledge that everything I am about to describe is smaller than what it was. A photograph of a fire is not the fire. What I am giving you is a photograph. Now let me tell you about the levels. There is a moment in the dying that is not unconsciousness. It is something else. Unconsciousness is the absence of experience. What I moved into was not absence. It was a kind of compression, like suddenly being made very small inside a very large space and then released. Released into something that had no ceiling and no floor that I could find, and that was filled with a quality of light that does not exist in sunlight or lamplight or any light that comes from a source. This light did not come from a source. It simply was, in the way that temperature simply is, something you are inside rather than something you are looking at. I will say one more thing about the transition before I tell you what happened next. The transition out of my body was not frightening. I want to be precise about this because I think people expect me to describe terror, and the truth is that the dying itself was the least frightening part of everything I experienced over there. The terror came later. The terror was one of the things I was shown. But the dying, the actual departure, was almost gentle, like something releasing that had been held for a very long time. And then Jesus was present. I knew who it was the same way you know who is standing behind you before you turn around. Not from information, but from a quality of attention that is unmistakable. There was a knowing that arrived in me that was not mine, that said, "You know who is here." And I did. I did know who was there. He did not speak in the way I speak now. What happened was closer to direct transmission, a knowing that arrived complete, the way light arrives through a window, carrying everything at once rather than word by word. And the first thing that arrived was this: you are going to be shown something, all of it. You are not going to be protected from any part of it. You are going to see every level, and then you are going back. I understood in that moment that I was not there as punishment. That distinction matters enormously to me, and I want to make it clearly before I describe what came next. I was not being judged. I was being shown. There is a difference between a sentence and an education, and what I received was the latter. I was being shown something because I was going back, and what I was going back into required this knowledge. The showing was not cruelty. The showing was preparation. Then we began to descend. I am using the word descend because movement occurred, but the movement was not physical. There was no staircase. There was no tunnel. It was more like attention being directed, as if reality rearranged to show you the next thing, and then the next, and then the next, and each rearrangement was a different place. The first level arrived the way cold arrives in a room. I did not see it and then feel it. I was suddenly in it, and the inness was absolute. The best I can describe the first level is this. Imagine the loneliness of the worst moment of your life. The specific loneliness of being in a room full of people and knowing that not one of them sees the actual you. 13 years of addiction gave me a very intimate knowledge of that feeling. The first level of hell was that feeling as an environment. It was a place made of disconnection, not fire, not screaming, not the visual drama of religious paintings. It was the feeling of being surrounded by other presences and being completely invisible to all of them, and of that being permanent, and of there being no way out of the permanence. I stood in that place long enough to feel its full weight. Jesus was present beside me. He did not explain it yet. He let me feel it. Then the second level. I need to stop and breathe here, even though I am not there anymore and I am safe in the place I am in right now. 3 years later, the second level still requires me to stop. The second level was made of regret. Again, not as an emotion, as an environment. It was a place where every choice that had led away from your actual life was fully visible. Not theoretically visible, not abstractly visible, but laid out in complete and perfect detail. Every single alternative, everything that could have been chosen, every version of the person you could have been. And they were all there, all present, all detailed. And you were the version of yourself who was standing in the wrong one, looking at all the right ones through a distance you could not cross. I grew up with a version of religion that taught about hell as fire, heat, burning, physical torment administered to a physical body. What I am describing is something that operates at a depth that physical pain cannot reach. Physical pain is an interruption. What I was shown was something that does not interrupt. It is the permanent, unmedicated knowledge of everything you could have been that you are not, displayed in complete and merciless detail, forever. After the second level came the third, and then the fourth. And I am not going to walk you through each one individually, not because I do not remember them. I remember all of them with a clarity that 11 minutes or 11 lifetimes have not touched. But because we would be here for hours, and I want to get to the ones that changed the specific texture of who I am now. What I will tell you about the middle levels is that they were variations on a theme, and the theme was this: the consequences of disconnection from truth. Each level was a particular kind of disconnection made permanent. The third level was the disconnection of numbness, the choice to not feel as a way of surviving, made into an eternity where you never feel anything, and eventually realize you would give everything to feel even pain. The fourth level was the disconnection of performance, the life spent being what other people needed you to be, made into an eternity where you perform forever for an audience that does not exist and never did. I knew each of these levels from the inside. That is the thing I need you to hear. I was not being shown a catalog of strangers' fates. I was being shown a catalog of things I had already been living. Fragments, versions, the shape of where each road I had taken in my addiction was pointing. Not where it had arrived, because I had been stopped before it arrived, but where the direction led. And that is the education. That is what I mean when I say I was shown this because I was going back and I needed to know. The sixth level was the one where I first began to understand the word every in what I was being shown. Every level. Not a sampling, not the highlights. The seventh level existed. The eighth level existed. I do not know how many levels there are because I do not have a number. I have the experience of there being more than I expected, more than religion had prepared me for, and each one worse than the one before in a direction that is not the direction of physical pain, but the direction of spiritual isolation. And then there was the last level. I'm not going to be able to give this to you completely. I'm telling you that up front. I've tried to describe the last level to 3 different people in my life since I came back, people I trust with the specific weight of what happened over there. And each time I have arrived at a point where the words simply stop being adequate, and I sit in silence. This is the level that the thumbnail refers to. This is the level that is the worst. The last level was the complete and permanent absence of the thing I can only call hope. Not hope in the motivational sense, the belief that things will improve. I mean something more foundational than that. The knowledge in the living that things could be different, that you could choose differently, that tomorrow is a real thing that contains real possibilities that today does not contain. The last level was the place where that knowledge was gone, not suppressed, not buried, gone. Removed from the architecture of experience entirely. And what was left in its place was a clarity, a perfect, absolute, merciless clarity about exactly what was true, and exactly what was permanent, and exactly what was not coming. And the clarity itself was the torment, because clarity without hope is not peace. It is not acceptance. It is the full weight of what is, without any of the mercy of what might be. I have never come back from describing the last level without needing to sit in silence for a while. I am sitting in that silence now, internally, as I speak this, and I ask you to hold the silence with me for a moment. Because I came back from there, and I need you to know what that means. Jesus brought me back from the last level the same way we had arrived at each one, not through movement I could describe as movement, through a shift in attention, a rearrangement of what was present. One moment I was in the last level, standing in the absolute, merciless clarity of permanent hopelessness. And then I was somewhere else. And the somewhere else had a quality I recognized as the quality I had first felt when the light arrived. The quality of being inside something that intended my presence. He said, or I understood, or the knowledge arrived. Now you know why you are going back. I did not need it explained. I understood it the way you understand a sentence when you already know the language. I was going back because I had been shown every level and I was still here. And being still here after being shown every level was itself the message. I was not destroyed by what I was shown. I was made to know what I was shown, and the knowing was survivable, and the survival was the point. There were children I had not had yet. I did not know they were children at the time. I knew them as reasons, as shapes of future that I could feel without being able to see. There was work I had not done yet, work I am doing now, in this video, in every conversation I have had since that bathroom floor, every time I have said what I am about to say to you. The knowing is survivable. That is the message. Every level of hell is a form of disconnection from truth made permanent. And the reason I was shown all of it is the same reason you are hearing this. Because the pathway that leads there is the same pathway I had been walking for 13 years, and it does not look like a pathway to hell when you are walking it. It looks like relief. It looks like getting through. It looks like making the pain small enough to bear. It looks like 11 minutes on a bathroom floor while 3 people watch your color change. The paramedic who brought me back has no explanation for the resuscitation. I know this because I asked him, a year after it happened, when I finally had the language to ask. He said what he told me was off the record, and what he told me off the record was that he had done this job for 14 years, and he had not expected me to come back, and he did not know why I did, and he had thought about it since. I told him why. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "That sounds like it was important." I told him yes, it was important. I have been thinking about what I believed before I died. I was not without faith, exactly. I had been raised in a tradition that had given me the vocabulary of faith without, I now think, the actual substance of it. I knew the words for what God was. I knew the categories. Heaven and hell existed in my cosmology as destinations, as places where people ended up based on a judgment that happened after death. That is the doctrine I had held, loosely, without examination, for most of my life. What I hold now is different in one specific and essential way. The difference is not about the existence of those places. I know they exist. The difference is in my understanding of what they are. They are not assigned. They are accrued. Every level of what I was shown was a form of something that had been practiced in life, a pattern of disconnection that had been chosen, slowly, repeatedly, until it became the shape of the soul. The soul that practices disconnection from truth in life is already living in a version of what I saw over there. What happens at death is not a change in kind, it is a change in degree. The mercy that this world provides, the mercy of being able to choose again, of tomorrow containing possibilities that today does not contain, that mercy is removed. And what remains is what was already there, in full, without mitigation. I think about that when I'm having a hard day. I think about it when I am tempted by the specific mercy of numbness, the old mercy, the mercy that was never actually merciful, but that I spent 13 years mistaking for kindness. I think about the third level, the level made of permanent numbness, and I think about the direction that particular mercy points, and I choose again. This is what I mean when I say the experience is the thing I am still living. It is not a story I tell about the past. It is a map I use in the present. Every day I use the map. Every day I make a choice that the map shows me is a choice between a particular kind of present relief and a particular kind of permanent destination. And I choose based on what I know rather than what I feel. That is the decision. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive once as a transformation that makes the rest easy. It arrives every morning, small and specific, as an ordinary moment in an ordinary day that I now understand carries a weight it did not carry before I was shown what I was shown. The ordinary transfigured. That is the only way I know how to name it. I make coffee now, and I know I am making coffee. I mean that in a way that is hard to explain. Before the bathroom floor, I was in my life without being in my life. I was running a program, managing sensations, reducing pain, looking for the next thing that would make the current thing bearable. Nothing landed. Nothing arrived as itself. Everything was a means to the next thing. The addiction was the clearest expression of that, but the addiction was not the cause. The addiction was the symptom of a way of living that had never quite landed in the actual moment. Now I land. I make coffee and I feel the weight of the cup. I call my mother and I feel the specific texture of her voice. I sit in a room and I feel the fact that I am sitting in a room, that this room is real, that I am in it, that being in it is not nothing. The ordinary has weight now that it did not have before. Not because I decided to be grateful, because I was shown what it costs to not be in it. And the cost is every level of what I was shown. And the cup of coffee is what remains when that cost is paid. And the cup of coffee is sufficient. This is what I want to leave you with, and I'm going to leave it quietly, because this is not the kind of thing that needs to be pushed. You are in a moment right now. You are in a room. You are breathing. These facts are not small. I know they feel small. I know the sensation of not being able to feel the weight of your own life, of going through it like running a program, of using whatever you use to make the unbearable smaller. I lived that for 13 years. I know the specific sensation of deciding that feeling less is the same as feeling fine. It is not. And I know what it points toward. I have been shown every level of what it points toward in a time that was not 11 minutes, with someone beside me who did not look away from any of it. And I came back. That is the whole message. I came back. The knowing is survivable. What I was shown was survivable. You are survivable, not despite what is hard in your life, not after it is resolved, not on the other side of the work. As what you are, right now, in this moment, in this room, with whatever weight you are carrying. The cup of coffee is real. The weight of it in your hands is real. The fact that you are in a room that exists and that tomorrow is still a thing that contains possibilities that today does not contain, that is still true, right now, and it is not a small thing. I am Maya. I died on a bathroom floor. I was shown every level of hell before I was sent back, and the last level was the worst. And I am here. And if you needed to hear that someone went all the way down and came back and can still make coffee and feel its weight and call it sufficient, now you have heard it. Sit with that. You do not need to respond right now. You do not need to do anything with it immediately. Just sit with it. That is the only thing I have left to give you.